Hey everybody, it's your man James, Mr. Quinn Treasures, back again with some more video action for you. Happy 4th of July to all of you here in the States. It's good old Independence Day, America's 250th birthday, and I gotta say, she doesn't look a day over 220. Yes, so it's going to be a big celebration tonight. We're going to see some fireworks around here, but before we see any fireworks in the skies, we're going to see some fireworks right here on this video here as we go into some more comic industry craziness. Now, this is something that I came across that was sent to me a couple days ago. And it's just something that kind of, tickled me enough to say, I got to talk about this. It's a little something with artist Mark Brooks complaining about retailers basically making too much money off of exclusive variant covers to books that they themselves are getting made. I know it sounds kind of ridiculous, but we're going to get into this in a minute here. I just it was a perfect thing to talk about on Independence Day, since we're talking about the country, its history, steeped in capitalism and in, the association and all these things. And so I thought it would be a great time to talk about this with what Mark Brooks is saying. So I want to thank you all for joining me today, and I hope you have some fun at your cookouts and stuff. And before we go any further here, let's get me off the screen, and then we'll share the screen. Okay, and here we are. This is the Mark Brooks post. I saw it was sent to me from Facebook because I'm not on Facebook anymore, so someone sent this to me. But we're going to read this here. We're going to go into the little sections here. It goes, I'm finding out more and more about some of these retailers and their exclusive Absolute Batman variants. In many cases, the retailers are making mid to high five figures, sometimes even six figures, while only giving the artist 100 issues or so for them to sell themselves, plus a little money, often around $1,000. So basically what he's coming down with is he feels artists are not getting enough for doing these exclusive variant covers for retailers. And we're going to get into what it takes to get that done in a moment here. But I just thought it was interesting because the way he seems to be kind of framing it is kind of like he's some champion for creative rights, and he's looking out for creators being taken advantage of. Like this is like back in the golden and silver age with guys like Jack Kirby and Wally Wood and things like that, Siegel and Schuster. We all know how those guys got screwed. Bill Finger. These are the guys who got screwed over royally. But they didn't fight because they wanted more of a pie of someone else's. They just wanted a fair shake. They're like, hey, can I get some health insurance over here? Hey, can I get a retirement fund over here? Hey, can I get like a decent page rate over here? That's all they were fighting for. Hey, can I have some rights to the creations I'm creating? Yeah, see, that's what they wanted. They weren't just saying, hey, yo, you're over there making a lot of money after paying me a fair wage. You need to give me more of that money. They didn't do that. That's what Mark Brooks is doing here. To me, it just strikes me as, in the words of the great Norm Macdonald, a bunch of left-wing commie gobbledygook. That's what this sounds like to me. Just a case of sour grapes, of someone who wants more than their due and thinks they're entitled to that. And, I just think that's so totally wrong. But, this is nothing new when it comes to Mark Brooks, because this is a guy who's attacked the readership. He's attacked his fellow creatives. So is it really a surprise he would attack retailers in this venture? I don't think so. But we'll continue on here. The more I hear about this, the angrier I'm getting. If you're a retailer making mid to high five figures and not cutting the artist in, I hope that artist figures it out and stops doing variants for you. If I find out a retailer is treating a creator that way, I'm going to go out of my way to make sure they know how they're being taken advantage of. Those days need to be over. Respect and compensate the creator that's making a lot of money, or I'm coming for them. So again, now we have the threat. He's gonna go after the retailers who were doing this. He's gonna talk to the artists doing the work and tell them not to do it and all this other stuff. And again, you saw up there what he said. They're getting copies that they can sell. They're also getting a nice tidy sum, $1,000 for a single image. And then on top of that, you have the whole fact of the original artwork, which, your boy here, Mr. Comic Art Guru, former art rep, I know that there's a lot of money to be made in that stuff. So if the artist got to keep the art to the cover on top of that, they have plenty of ways of making money, it seems. It's just for Mark Brooks, he doesn't like the retailers making a lot of money. And again, this is a guy who's going out of his way to help destroy the comic industry with his political bullshit, attacking people, driving off readers, destroying the works, writing shitty stories that no one wants to buy, inches deep stacks in these retailer shops of books they're never going to sell, because they're just garbage work. This has done a lot to destroy the very comic shops that he's now railing against in this. And guys like him are responsible for that. But he doesn't talk about any of that. It's just, oh, wait a minute, retailers have found a way to make some real money money now? Oh, they got to give up some of that to me and mine. And, again, like I said, this is just so much commie gobbledygook. And again, just like we just saw with Heather Antos, we just saw that with her thing where she attacked John Byrne, trying to get his X-Men Elsewhen book, to like not sell. And instead it had the exact opposite effect, the Streisand effect, and it's sold out and is going to a second printing, all because of her mouth. You would think these people would start to realize they don't have, as I've noted, the cultural cachet that they used to have. But here's Mark Brooks thinking, no, I got that cachet. I can get this to change. And he's wrong. He can't. Now, I will admit, I do agree on one sort of point with him is these variant covers are a problem, but not in the way he's talking about them. But his way of seeing it as a problem is completely incorrect. But we'll finish out here with his little post. Addendum. This is not against retailers that are ethical. Now, that's interesting. What does he mean by ethical? Whose standard of ethics? Is it the standard of you fulfill a contract with someone and you do what you're supposed to do and that's ethical? Or is it, no, if you get a lot of stuff, you need to give that up to other people who don't have it? The socialist bullshit way of ethics, of taking from the successful to give to the not successful. You see, there's a difference there. And I don't think he's talking about the former way of ethics. I think he's much more in the latter category. I love and support retailers and do covers for them from time to time. Oh, you do? So you're benefiting, and yet you're crying you're not benefiting enough. Hell, I'm doing one for a retailer right now. Well, if you're so against them, Mark, because you think they're ripping people off, why would you be doing? See, that's again, look at the hypocrisy in this guy, the stupidity of this buffoon. He's sitting here saying that he's going to try to get artists not to do these covers for the retailers because they're taking advantage of the artists, and yet he's doing them himself right now, according to his own words. So it's good enough for him to get that $1,000 and 100 copies and the original art to sell, but not good for other artists. Oh, that's not good enough for them. Almost now I'm starting to think maybe he wants to try to, sideline other artists to not do them so he can get more of those exclusives for himself. I mean, is this him trying to force his own compatriots out of the marketplace? I don't know. It certainly sounds like it to me. I'm even doing a Whatnot stream next week for the charity BINC, which benefits and supports retailers going through hard times. Well, if you want to benefit retailers in hard times, how about not creating such shitty work and driving away readership with your politics and attacking them online? How about doing that? How about not putting out, a bunch of books that don't sell? If you did that, they wouldn't be in hard times, would they? But I guess that just makes a little too much sense for a guy like Mark Brooks. I think there needs to be more transparency and respect. Respect for who, Mark? Because you certainly don't have any respect for the readers. You've shown that on your timelines of your social media many times. You don't have any respect for your fellow colleagues if they don't follow the same political views as you. You've shown that too. And now here you are showing no respect for retailers who you admit have hard times, but then when they find a way to make money, well, they got to give that money back up to us artists. So where's the respect, Mark? Where's the respect? And I think this pretty much sums it up, his commie gobbledygook right here. There's plenty to go around for everyone. That old chestnut. There's plenty to go around for everyone. That means if you have a lot and I don't, you need to give up more so that I have closer to what you have. I should have just as much as you. Everybody should have the same amount. Equity, equity, equity. Yeah, we all know where that leads. He talks about getting angrier, and I'm the one getting angrier reading his nonsense. But let's not go into that. I don't want to make it about personalities. Instead, let's talk about the actual dynamics and the actual realities of this. So I did some digging. And I found out, what does it actually take to get an exclusive cover made if you're a comic book retailer? Because there's a process, I'm sure. It's not you just don't get to make a book based on a property owned by another publisher and do whatever you want. There's a process involved. So what is that process? And I looked it up, and here's what I found. And it's got the 6 bullet points here, and I'll go through them with you guys. Identify the publisher and title. You'll need to choose a comic series that is in print and has a variant program. Some publishers, like Archie Comics, have formal retailer variant programs that allow stores to request exclusive covers for certain titles. Others may be more open to custom requests, especially for niche or indie titles. So right there, you gotta go out and find the book you want and the publisher you want, and you gotta make sure you see they actually have a program to do it. Some are more nuanced and more custom. Some have a actual specific setup for that such a thing, like Archie Comics. So that's step number one, just to even get the foot in the door. Then we got part two: contact the publisher. Reach out directly to the publisher's retail or editorial team. Introduce yourself, explain your store, and specify the titles you want the variants on. You can suggest multiple titles to increase your chances. Provide a concept or design idea, and ideally reference art, even in stick figures, to give the artist and publisher a starting point. So now it's not just you have to reach out to them and ask them, can we do this? Now you need to explain it and tell them what you hope to gain from it. You almost like you're going for like an interview here, as it were. And then on top of that, they say to ask for multiple titles, because you might not, if you picked out just one title you want to do, they may not do that title. They may say, no, we're not going to do that. So now you have to pick out multiples, hoping you're going to get the one or ones that you want, which you may not. So right there is already risk involved. And then on top of that, now you have to be part, you're almost working for them, because you have to come up with your concept design, and you have to draw it out for the artist and the publisher to understand what it is you want. So far, so now you're doing part of the creating of the actual image yourself. So you're almost like an artist of the book. You're like the layout artist. It's crazy to me when I saw this. Then we go into part three: secure an artist. Publishers may connect you with an artist, or you can propose your own. The artist will need to create a concept sketch for editorial approval before final artwork. Now that means that they have to take whatever concept you do, create an image from it, and then that has to pass editorial. Meaning if they don't like it, they're not going to let you do it. So even when you do your concept, you may not even get the concept image that you wanted to get, because it can be rejected by editorial. This helps ensure the cover meets content guidelines and is suitable for the title. So again, their focus in this isn't about what makes a cool image or what's going to help your store. It's more about, hey, this is going to reflect well on our book. And that's what they want. That's where the publisher is coming in. So you have to take that concern into your reasoning, And so again, even more risk now, because now what you might have thought was a great idea, they won't. And you'll have to refine it or change it. In part four: understand the process and deadlines. Publishers often set art deadlines, first of cover dates, and shipping schedules. For example, Archie Comics has specific deadlines for concept sketches, FOC, and on-sale dates. Some retailers share progress updates with their audience to build excitement. So not only now are you, having to contact them, interview with them, basically, come up with the concept design that may be denied, picking out the books you want to do it with, which may be denied, picking out an artist you want to do it, who may be denied, and then on top of all that, now you have to follow their rules of production. So again, all this stuff that you're having to do as the retailer, bending over backwards to get this cover even made. Okay, so then we go on to point five: agree on print run and cost. Most store variants are printed in small runs, often around 300 copies. Costs vary. Archie Comics charges $2 per copy on a $3.99 title, or $2.50 on a $4.99 title, covering printing, packing, and shipping. Although I'm sure in that price is also a nice little tidy nest egg for the publisher, because, they're not doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. They expect to make a little profit on this too. And then again, that's not including the fact you're going to have to pay your artist too. So look at all these costs you're incurring right off the jump street. You got to pay for the production. You got to pay for the shipping. You got to pay for the printing. You got to pay for the publisher. You got to pay for the artist. All this up front before you've seen dime one or even seen the book completed. You'll need to commit to the minimum order, example, given 300 units to keep the variant in print. Now, this is just an example, 300. The number might be higher. It could be 500. It could be 700. It could be 1,000. Imagine that. You would have to pay to get 1,000 copies made of this book on your dime. And then, according to Mark Brooks, you're giving 100 copies away to the artist, his comps, as it were. So that leaves you down with 900 copies. And then, again, you've put out all this money for production, for printing, for shipping, for, publisher fees, artist fees. We're talking you could be into this like what, maybe $15,000, just to use a nice round number for everybody there. You're 15 grand in the hole just getting this cover made. And then you have a minimum order of units you need to get, at least that many, if not more, which of course means more money. So we're talking what, $20,000 spent to get this book made? You're in the hole 20 grand. Well, the artist has made some money, the publisher has made some money, the printer has made some money, and you have yet to see dime one. And somehow, if you are able to make this successful enough that you can get big money made on this variant cover, Mark Brooks thinks you owe the artist even more money on top of what you've already given him, on top of the comped copies, on top of the original art he can sell, on top of all of that stuff. You need to give him more money if you somehow make this successful. Tell me how that makes any sense. And then here's part 6, which is promote and sell the variant. Use your store's marketing channels, social media, in-store displays, and events like conventions to promote the exclusive. Many successful variants tie into events or promotions to drive sales, which again is just basically saying, you got to do your usual job as the retailer. So you had all that stuff I listed before, and then on top of that, you have to do your usual retailer duties to get this cover to sell. Now, this is all the risk you as the retailer are taking on in making one of these covers happen. And this is what Mark Brooks is not factoring into anything he is saying. He's just looking at raw numbers like, oh, you did this cover and it made, $100,000 or whatever. And now I want a piece of that pie because you only gave me $1,000 to draw the cover. It's like, never mind that you got copies you could sell and make some money with. Never mind you have the original art you could sell and make some money with. Never mind I took on the risk of spending $20,000 or whatever to even get the book made that I'm in the hole for, that I have to recover. Never mind any of that stuff. No. If you made $100,000, you got to give me some of that money. I mean, it's just a shakedown, really, when you think about it. His threat that he made is just a shakedown, a commie shakedown. It kills me. But, is it really as money-making as Mark Brooks is saying it is? Well, I looked into that too, because me, I always like to come with the receipts for you guys. So I started looking into this, and I went to eBay because I figured it'd be the easiest place to look. And I started looking for some of these retailer exclusive variants. And I found this one here, which had just sold $170 or best offer. And I'm guessing since it doesn't have a strike through it, it means it didn't sell for a best offer. So $170 for this wraparound cover here for this exclusive variant to Absolute Batman number 20. Here's another one, a graded copy of Absolute Batman 16 by Tyler Kirkham, which is a retailer exclusive, a 9.8 and $100 or best offer. Wow. That's not that high a price tag. Then we got another one here, another issue 20 exclusive variant from a retailer, and $50. Here's another retailer exclusive from issue 20 with a wraparound cover, $55. See, I'm not seeing huge dollar signs on this. I mean, because again, look at this. This is on eBay. So, you got your eBay fees, you got your shipping fees, you got, maybe, if you have a certain payment processor like PayPal or whatever, you got their fees, factor all that. See, so this is more money that you're going to have to put out to get these books to sell. So even if you have the books printed and you've paid the printer, you've paid the publisher, you've paid the artist, you've paid the shipping, you got to pay your provider here, like your service, like your eBay or whatever. You got their cut. You got the cut of your payment processors. Look at all the money that's coming out of everything you sell. So if you're selling a $50, $60, $100 copy, how much are you going to end up with at the end of that? What, $45? I mean, granted, that's not a bad price tag, but it's a far cry from, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Here's Mark Brooks, which I believe he's the one that had this himself for his own website, I believe. I can't be assured of that because I didn't have time to check everything on all this, but I think I saw that this was for his own website, his own version, right here. And he wants $300. So you're telling me you want $300 for this cover, and if you got 100 copies of that, how much money is that at $300? Well, gee, that's $30,000. Isn't that in that mid 5-figure range he was talking about? So here he is selling his own book for the kind of money he says the retailers are. And again, best offer. So they may not get this price. And again, factor in all the costs that were incurred before this cover even was made. But there has been some issues with this stuff. And as I noted before, I have issues with it too. And well, one of the issues we see here is a story that I found out about while trying to research all of this, is a story called Dropgate, which happened a few months back, which there was an Absolute Batman 19 retailer and variant cover, but it ended up in controversy. And what happened is the company Heavy Mental Comics paid artist Dan Quintana to do an exclusive variant for them. And the way it was supposed to work is they were going to, have some drops for when these would be made available, and they were going to be in like a certain amount of copies per drop. And I think the amount was going to be 100 copies for the first 2 drops, which were going to be at $25 and $75 respectively. But what happened is they only did 25 copies instead of 100. And then with the rest of the almost 2,000 copies they made, which I wonder, was that the minimum they had to do? I don't know. Well, they didn't say. They shifted to their Whatnot live stream where they had copies remarked and signed by the artist, and they were some were selling for like $1,500 to $2,500. With buy it now options, vanished almost immediately. And now the problem is that there were reports of bot fueled purchases by dealers, and leaving fans, unable to get anything of the books themselves, and it created artificial scarcity and dynamic pricing. There's poor communication on the part of the retailer to let fans, to meet the fans' expectations. They accused of price gouging and class warfare, and it was a big mess. The company came out and said that, they didn't meet the standard they hold themselves to, which, I would think if this happened, you knew what you were doing, at least to some degree. This wasn't totally out of your control. And they announced it for in the future. It'll be 500 copies for Whatnot bin drops, not like the 1,900 that they had this time. So they're trying to, dial back on the controversy. And, we see here there was still even more, despite the backlash, the variant is still very well, demanded, reaching $650. And the original cover art sold for $100,000. Now, I couldn't find out who sold the cover art, because if it was the artist, well, then this flies directly in the face of everything that Brooks was crying about. Because if Dan Quintana sold that cover and he got $100,000, even if there's fees for, the auction house or whatever that he had to pay, he still made a nice tidy sum off this cover. Again, in those mid 5 figures that Brooks was crying about. And so right here, you can see that blows that away. Now, if it was the retailers, okay, well, then the question now becomes, how much did they pay Quintana for the cover? Did they pay him $1,000? Did they pay him extra to get the actual art? Who knows? But again, even if it was the retailer who got this number, as long as they didn't hoodwink the artist and screw him out of something and say, well, we want you to give us the art for nothing, and then they made that money, if they paid him for it and then he didn't think enough to go, hey, this art could be worth a whole lot of money down the line, maybe I should hold on to this, or maybe I should make it in the contract so this says I get to keep the art. That's a failure on his part. That's not the failure of the retailer. That's a failure of the artist having lack of vision in their own abilities. But because of Dropgate, it's highlighted some of the risks involved in this and how the secondary market strategies can be. And so, in short, the controversy stemmed from a mismatch between fan expectations and Heavy Mental's unconventional auction-driven release strategy, leading to accusations of scarcity manipulation and significant secondary market price spikes. So, again, this is the problem with some of this stuff, is when you have these exclusives, you can manipulate things in a way. And do I think that's unethical? Yes, I do. But Mark Brooks wasn't crying about them doing unethical things like this. He was only crying about the fact that they might make money from it. See, if they were doing this and he was making the money, do you think he'd be crying about it? Hell no. Hell no. And again, for me, as bad as this is, whenever you have something that is limited, you're always going to have the supply-demand issue. That's always going to be there. And again, I know this again, being the art guru that I am, you guys know, Mr. Former Art Rep. One of one. That's why comic art is so expensive. I mean, granted, it's gotten crazy in the last several years, partially because of the pandemic, partially because of collectability. And that's a problem. See, and that's the real problem I see with these in the industry, is how the industry has now turned comics into a collectible much more than an entertainment source. This is partly why the work inside sucks so badly on most books, because they're not caring about what the story is or what the art looks like on the interior. Just get that awesome cover and make it exclusive and make it, a limited edition, 500 copies. And then that way you can try to make a lot of money by playing off people's FOMO, fear of missing out, and that kind of thing. And this just plays into other strategies I'm seeing now, which, you guys saw me talk about this. I did a quick little short video last month about the blind bag thing, where they put these comics in blind bags saying you have a chance for a rare variant. There's rare variants and sketch covers in some of these blind bags. And if you buy the blind bag for twice the amount the normal book is worth, well, then you might get one of these rare variants worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. And I did one. You saw me do it. I'll drop a link down here in the description so you can check that out. I did one with the new Mask book from Energon Universe. And what did I get? I got the regular cover for paying double the price of the book. So yeah, it's to me, that was a scam. And this seems to be like in the same vein where you can get scams going with variant covers. And to me, that's the real problem with all of this. The ability to scam people, to make it like a gamble, or make it like, you're trying to create, false scarcity and things of that nature of these things, making it more about collectible than about entertainment value. Your boy, I do Why It's Great on here for a reason. I talk about books because I think they're great stories and great, tales of adventure and action and pathos. That's what I care about. But that's not what the industry care about when you see things like this happening. This was the cover. This was the cover that caused all the controversy. And, again, I mean, okay, it's all right, I guess. It's got that kind of like modern painted horror type of thing going, I guess. But, to me, I don't see what the big deal about this cover is. But it does. It sells for big money. I found right here on eBay. Here's one right here. Someone has one for $1,500. And it's, signed and remarked by the artist, as they noted in the story about this. So, I could see, again, a rare edition to be sure. But again, $1,500, I don't think it's worth that. But if someone else does, that is what it is. And, so Brooks crying about them making this kind of money off a book like that, well, that's just fooling his money is soon parted, is all I can say is what it is. That's all it really boils down to. And you can't control for that. You can't demand more money from people, because there are some people out there with more money than brains. You just can't do that. That's not right. And like I said, here it again is the Dan Quintana's art that sold for $110. Again, another piece that, again, just, it's got the absolute Batman and Wonder Woman together on it. And, again, it's all right. It's painted. It's, whatever. It got that horror gothic thing going that they're doing with the whole absolute line. But again, they said it broke six figures, making modern comic history, which, maybe that's true. But if, again, knowing your boy here with comic art history, $100,000, that's not, as big a deal as you would think. I've seen plenty of pieces go for way more. I've seen art that maybe didn't go for quite this much, but it went for something, $50,000, $60,000. I'm like, it's worth that. It's not worth that much. And yet the people are getting it. Because why? Because people want the rarity. It's a one of one. It's the only one of its kind. The true collectible. And so you can get crazy money when you have the thing that is so unique that way. That's just how it is. That's how it is in any collecting. So we go back to Mark Brooks's original little thesis here. And, we see now that, the 5 and 6 figures he's crying about is like, well, but you have the ability to do that with the copies you're given. And you're paid on top of that. And you have the original art you can sell, as you saw, which you can get even more for that. So where is it he is owed some of this money from the retailers? Where does that come from? Where is the logic in this? And the answer is there is no logic outside of greed and envy, which is what all socialists really boil down to. They're all greedy and envious. They're greedy and envious of those who have more than them or who do better than they do. And that's why they work so hard to drag those people down. This is what it is. And just to further show his duplicity, I just saw this on his X account recently, where he's talking about someone who said that, like, they're these sick designs, for the Batman, Absolute Batman here. And he goes, Absolute Batman is a framework every company, editor, and writer should follow. Stop dictating to artists what to draw through an overly detailed script and dictatorial direction. Give them a framework, invite them into the story writing process, and let them go crazy. A skilled, experienced artist will visually out-imagine any writer or editor every time. The editors, writers, and companies that realize that reap the rewards and oftentimes get the credit. So, right here, they reap the rewards. Well, isn't that what the retailers are doing by getting these covers created? They're taking all the risk. They're putting up all the money up front. They're the ones who are potentially, if this fails, taking a huge loss. But because some of these guys are either business savvy or perhaps a little unscrupulous, as the Dropgate thing shows, because they're able to parlay it into big money, somehow Brooks thinks he's owed more because they were successful, because they reaped the rewards for taking those risks that he himself would never have taken. I don't see Brooks going to the publisher saying, hey, let me get my own covers and do them and sell them. He doesn't want to do that. Why? Because he knows he probably is going to lose money on the deal. So he doesn't want to do that. But let others take the risks. And if they happen to be successful, well, I'll just on the back end demand they give me more. I mean, there is nothing more communistic and socialist than that, than demanding from the producers more of what they work to produce because you think you're owed more, even though you took virtually none of the risk. I mean, what risk did Brooks or any of the artists take in doing these covers? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The only risk they took was getting a nice check for $1,000, a bunch of comp copies they can sell, and having the original art to sell for even bigger potential dollars. That's their risk. And somehow for Mark Brooks, that isn't good enough, which leads us right to this. I think this pretty much typifies his mindset. Right here. He's got a pile full of money, but it's still not enough. Give me more of your money, retailers. That's the Mark Brooks line. That's what he's saying here. And this is why I had to talk about this, because this is wrong. You do not get to take a piece of someone else's success when they're taking the lion's share, if not the entire whole ball of risk. The ones who take the risk deserve the most reward. It's just that simple. That's ethical. That's fair. That's equitable. And if that's not good enough for a guy like Mark Brooks, well, maybe he's in the wrong industry. Like I said, there are problems with these variant covers that I have. But it's not because some retailers are finding a way to keep their stores alive when guys like him have spent the last decade attacking readers and attacking creators and putting out shit work that doesn't sell. No. That's not what I'm upset about. I'm upset that these books are making the books less valuable as entertainment and seen only as a niche collectible thing that is only about gambling and taking a chance and a risk to get something rare so that you can have the fear of missing out if you don't get it. That's my problem with it. We had this problem before in comics in the 90s, with the gimmick covers. And it almost destroyed the industry then. And I fear we could see a very similar thing with these variant cover exclusives and, blind bag things. And that could very much bring down the industry again. And again, that was at a time when the industry was healthy when it hit. They were making money hand over fist back in those days compared to now. And it almost took them out. Imagine the condition the industry is in today and having that similar, fallout. What do you think would be the outcome? But again, Mark Brooks isn't thinking about any of this. He's too busy trying to line his own pockets. And that is ultimately why I called this out, because this is just insanity. These people should be removed from the industry. They have no business here. These are just parasites, bloodsuckers, a bunch of commie losers who are failures at life and failures at pretty much anything else they've probably ever done. And this is why they hate the successful so much. Again, not a big surprise with this guy, if you just glance at his timeline and, now you can see the greed is coming out of him. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. His threats, his bullshit, his commie view of the world, it's all a bunch of nonsense. And, I hope the industry wakes up and stops trying to make comics a collectible and make it back into entertainment like it was meant to be. Because if they don't, I don't foresee good things in the future. Variant edition, because that almost killed them once before. And it could do it again very easily, even more easily this time than it did last time, because the health of the industry is nowhere near as robust as it was back then. So there you have it. My little thoughts there on Mark Brooks' little take on what he's owed by retailers who are seeing success at these exclusive variants. Let me know what you think. Do you agree with me that the real problem isn't the exclusive variants, the way they're paying artists for them, but it's more of how they're destroying the entertainment value of the comics? Or do you think Mark Brooks is right? Do you think that the artists deserve more if the retailer is successful despite taking almost all the risks involved in getting these books made? Let me know what you think down below, because I always want to hear what the people got to say. And I will be back with some more stuff very shortly for you guys. And until then, have a very happy and safe 4th of July. And until next time, take care. Hey, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much.